You're listening to Voces, Críticas, Critical Voices. I am your producer and host, Silvana Falcón. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Theresa Montaño, Vice President of the California Teachers Association, known as the CTA. Dr. Theresa Montaño began her teaching career as a middle school paraeducator in Northeast Los Angeles. She later became a middle and high school social studies classroom teacher and taught for 15 years in Los Angeles and Denver, Colorado. She helped establish a program for teachers interested in securing their national board certification and securing a stipend and retirement benefits for those teachers. Her years of experience as a middle and high school teacher in Los Angeles, coupled with more than a decade in higher education, gives her a special understanding of issues facing educators in California's public schools. Today, she's a professor of Chicano Studies with an emphasis in education at California State University, Northridge. Dr. Montaño's research interests include teacher activism, Chicana, Chicano, and Latino educational equity, critical multicultural education, and bilingual and English learner education. Her publications include 2 co-edited books, Transforming Practices in Urban Education with William de la Torre and Jacqueline Hughes, and Assault on Kids, How Hyper-Accountability, Corporatization, and Deficit Ideologies Are Destroying Our Schools, with Roberta Alkest and Paul Gorski. Dr. Montaño believes that these are crucial times for public education and for the CTA. I've invited her to talk about these unprecedented teacher strikes happening right now in Los Angeles. Welcome, Dr. Montaño, to Voces Críticas.
Thank you. I appreciate being asked.
So the demands of the teachers are primarily about higher pay, smaller class sizes, and more support staff, counselors, nurses, and other personnel that keep public schools going. What is your response to the school district that continues to say that these teachers' demands would lead to bankruptcy?
Well, first of all, I would have to say that the world knows, or most people should know, that funding for public education, pre-K through higher ed, is atrocious. That we can all agree on. And CTA has done everything it could to continually increase funding for public education, and we will continue to do that. That's a part of this movement. On the other hand, I think for district in particular and for county offices and for administrators in public education, they ought to really consider their priorities. There are a lot of positions and a lot of offices that we can reconsider and think about how do we restructure our district and our system so that the needs of the students and the classrooms are met first, and everything else then is met second.
The Los Angeles Unified School District is the second largest school district in this country after New York City. The LAUSD has about 30,000 teachers. This strike is the first strike in nearly 30 years for the union, for the United Teachers of Los Angeles. You are a longtime educator. You have been an educator in all levels of California public schools. You are a scholar. I would like to know, what is the significance of this moment for you?
I walked the line in '89, and at that point we had tremendous community support. But this particular struggle is for the health of the public education system in California. What we consistently seen is that as the students in the state of California in our public schools become more black and brown, the funding for public education decreases. We are one of the areas in public services that the privateers do not control, and they have their eye out on it. They want to control the billions of dollars that are in public education. This particular strike is not just about salaries, working conditions, health care, retirement, the traditional bread and butter issues that teachers deserve. We do deserve those things. Teachers deserve to retire with dignity and self-respect. On the other hand, they're not just fighting for themselves. We begin to realize that a part of the struggle is absolutely for the health of public education. It's against privatization. It's against charter school proliferation. It's against schools placing the needs of students of color behind the more affluent neighborhoods. And this strike, the parents, the educators, the moms, abuelitas, they're on the picket line with us. That's the difference. The difference is that this is not just about traditional union issues.
In your bio on the CTA website, it mentions your belief that a strong CTA is essential to the advancement of the entire labor movement because of, quote, areas of mutual concern such as privatization, which you just mentioned, fair taxation, and access to education, healthcare, and social services. Should we be viewing this current LAUSD strike as connected and essential to advancing labor movement that we need in this country?
Absolutely. You know, when I grew up, I was a daughter of a labor union advocate in the baker and confectionery workers. My father was a trade unionist. His union was strong and healthy. My husband used to work for the United Auto Workers, one of the strongest unions in the entire nation. The rich have decimated labor unions, private labor unions, retirement, job security, strong unions in the private sector are all about gone. Public sector unions are the strongest unions right now, and those are the ones that they're going after. And in that private public sector union, nurses and teachers are probably the strongest amongst them. We know that when we're out on strike, it's not just to improve working conditions and to save public education, but it's to save unions and the labor movement in particular. We just got out of a Supreme Court case called Janus, which was an attack on our union's ability to collect fees for services. This is not the last one. It's not the last. SEIU hasn't seen its last legal battle. We haven't seen our last legal battle. They're going after unions because they know that we're the only thing standing between the wealthy and the possibility of attaining a decent salary and raising your family in a way that they should be raised.
I think that is such a vital connection to be making because I think we are missing the significance of this moment if we simply think about it as just a teacher strike. It is a labor movement. It is part of a robust labor movement that are facing these same obstacles and barriers that you've just mentioned. The pensions are being attacked. The working conditions are being attacked. Working with dignity is all being attacked.
And I think our parents see that. We as a teachers union have supported our labor brothers and sisters when they are on the line. The Marriott hotel workers were recently online and they were striking. We pulled our conferences from those hotels. We told those hotels we're not going to go back until you settle with the hotel and restaurant workers. They've invited us to a celebration of that hard-fought won victory recently. They are on the lines with us. The nurses are there, social workers are there, the auto workers are there, the hotel and restaurant workers are there because they too realize that this isn't just about teachers. It's about building a labor movement and maintaining its strength throughout the world. Teachers just happen to be in the forefront in this particular instance, but they're not the only ones that are fighting for the life of labor unions or the labor movement.
In an article last week on January 10th in the Washington Post, it was called Why 30,000 Los Angeles Teachers Are Ready to Strike Over Huge Class Sizes, and this was written by Valerie Strauss. And she writes that 80% of the Los Angeles school district students live in poverty. How do these teachers' demands reflect the realities of poverty that is facing the school district, that is facing the majority of students in LAUSD, and that perhaps connects to the previous argument you were just making about the school district becoming browner and therefore resources being cut?
I think they directly impact that particular issue. I think one is, as educators, we recognize that the quality of education that our students are receiving, it can be improved. That we want to offer our students a quality public education. But in order to do so, we have to also be struggling to improve the conditions within those classrooms. If you go into art classrooms in LA, you will see outdated textbooks. You will see computers that need repair. You will see the fact that there's not a nurse. So if a child gets sick in a community where the working poor don't have access to health care, oftentimes the nurse in the school is the one that treats that child if they have an injury, if they fall on the playground, if they have a stomach ache. Those nurses are no longer there. If we really believe that it takes a community to raise a child and to make sure that that child is healthy, then the classroom teacher is an essential element, absolutely. But so are the nurses, so are the social workers, so is parent and community centers where our parents come in and are given the resources they need to help educate those students at home, given the voice they need to help determine where the funds come. This is about improving the quality of education for our students of color. We teach those students, and no teacher ever said, I think I'm going to become a teacher because it's going to be a lucrative career, or I'm going to become a classroom teacher because I want to be the strongest union member in the world. Every single teacher that I have met and everyone that's on the picket line, the first question they ask is, when can we go back? We're worried about our students. You have teachers that are now beginning to hold classes in their homes so that the kids can continue to get some semblance of an education. They want to be back, and they know that the students need them, not only need them to have decent health care and decent salary, stick around for more than 5 years, but they need the resources to give those students the quality education they deserve. Because students like me, who grew up in Florence and South Central LA, my parents knew growing up that the only salvation for me, my dad used to say, Mija, I don't want you to break your back like I do. I want you to get an education so that you don't have to live like this. Those are the hopes of our parents. And that's why those parents are on the picket line, bringing atole and champurrado and tamales and umbrellas and opening up their doors so that the teachers can use the bathroom. That's why they're there, because it's about their kids. It's just not about their kids' teacher.
I think it's the dreams of our ancestors as well, that we are on the front lines fighting for public education. This is speaking to a larger movement and urgency around the crisis of public education in California, but also around the country. And I really appreciate your framing here, because I think us, you and I who are now in university settings, we have a stake in this. We are in public education institutions that understand that this profession is one of a calling, is one of a commitment to human right to an education.
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Now, charter school teachers with the Independent Accelerated Schools Charter Network have joined the strike to also demand for better working conditions and support of public school educators. For you, what is the significance of having charter school teachers also join the LAUSD strike?
I think it's a dual significance. I think that the part of the significance was also the fact that you had almost 50,000 people outside the second day of the strike picketing the California Charter School Organization. I know many of my students, I happen to work in Chicano Studies with future teachers. Many of my students are in charter schools because that is the only place they can get a job. Charter schools are objectively siphoning off public education money for privatization or for private schools. Many of the teachers in those schools are some of the most disenfranchised, poorly treated, at-will employees anywhere. So if we think that the conditions for public school teachers are atrocious, the conditions for charter school educators in many cases is even worse. Their boards meet in private and until recently didn't have to hold public meetings. Their salaries are not negotiated in many cases. So the charter school and the unions, and they're now coming to public education unions and saying, hey, we need to be organized. We need to be represented. We're the ones that the privateers are negotiating with. We understand that they're trying to take over public education, but they're our employees, and they're treating us terribly. And this isn't the first time charter schools have joined or have gone on strike. Chicago, I think about 2 months ago, if I'm correct, recently anyway, Chicago held the largest charter school strike in the nation, the first one, and won it. So I think you're going to start seeing two things. You're going to start seeing a huge movement towards community schools because there's a strong belief that every school should be innovative. Every school should meet the needs of the immediate community. Every school should provide wraparound services. Every educator should have an opportunity to create the school that they think the community deserves. And the impetus for charter schools was to allow that innovation in many cases where there were genuine ideas for innovation. On the other hand, you also had profiteers that were looking at how do I get my hands on public school funds to create the kind of schools where I can control, the Bill Gates, the Waltons, others who are trying to buy their way into public education. So I think you're going to start seeing those teachers begin to recognize that they too need a union and they too need to improve their working conditions. And so you're going to start seeing a lot more of them ask for the union. And you're going to start seeing the public begin to recognize exactly what these for-profit charter schools are doing to public education. That's what I'm seeing in my neighborhood. The parents that are out on the picket line in Northeast LA are there because there was a charter school that was trying to enroll students who were in one of the best dual immersion schools in Northeast LA. They were trying to get funds and they were trying to enroll students. That charter school is now closed, partly because the parents organized against it. You're going to start seeing an awakening among parents that maybe charter schools aren't the answer to improving public education. Maybe what we need to do is work with our teachers to begin to create the schools our communities deserve.
You're listening to Dr. Theresa Montaño, Vice President of the California Teachers Association, the CTA, and Professor of Chicano Studies with an emphasis in education at California State University, Northridge, CSUN. We are talking about the unprecedented teacher strikes currently happening right now in Los Angeles, the first strike in nearly 30 years for the United Teachers of Los Angeles. In that same Washington Post article that I just mentioned by Valerie Strauss, she closes with the following questions that I would like you to comment on. She writes, quote, "Whose benefit is the Los Angeles School Board and Superintendent supposed to serve? The 600,000 public school students in the district, whose schools they are responsible for governing and who have a right to a quality education with reasonable class sizes? Or the privately run charter school sector that spent nearly $10 million in 2017 to elect a pro-charter majority on the LAUSD school board, an election that has been reported to be the most expensive school board race in U.S. history?" Your response to these questions posed by Strauss.
Well, I imagine if you ask me that question, it's going to be that they should be serving the 600,000 public school students in the districts and the parents and the communities that they serve. If you actually witness the kind of behavior on the part of the school board president, Monica Garcia, Austin Butner, and others, you will see the objective reality is that they're serving the interests of the charter school movement, and that $10 million that they put into electing the pro-charter majority of the LA school board is not going to stop with the election of Melavine or Monica Garcia or others. They're going to continue to try to own this school board. And the only way that we can change that is beginning to work with our parents and communities. They not only tried in the city of LA, but they tried in the state of California. They tried to buy the superintendent of public instruction, and it was a nail biter. We didn't match them dollar for dollar. There is no way that we will be able to raise the funding that these billionaires have in elections. But we can win the hearts and minds of the electorate, and we can win the hearts and minds of the parents. And we can expose exactly in whose interests they are working in, so that by the time this strike is over, we have not just won the demands that the teachers are asking for, but you have Austin Butner marching out, going back to own his own businesses and run his business and not run our schools like he does a private institution or a private financial institution. And the same goes for elected officials, including elected officials who are Latino, who grew up in the same community that I grew up with, who I went to school with, who I worked with, like Antonio Villaraigosa, side by side in UTLA in 1989 on that strike. We need to also, as Latinos, if we believe in social and educational justice, we need to begin to call them out and say, whose side are you on? When you go on the news and start owning the district's rhetoric, you're standing up for the billionaires against your own community.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for spending some time with us on Voces Críticas. I wondered if you had any final parting words that you would like to share.
I'm sure when I hang up, I'll still have a lot. And when I go join that picket line with those teachers and parents this afternoon, there'll be a whole lot more to share. But I just want your listeners to know that if they're in LA and they have some free time, come join us on the picket line. Come ask your questions. Come be with us. This is a historic moment.
Thank you, Teresa, for all that you do.
Thank you.